Hello, adventure. No, apparently not. Apparently, I don't have it in me. Oh God, I'm rusty. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers Podcast, coming to you from the Guildmaster's office as we sit down to discuss your performance over the past year. I'm your host, Conor Martin, and joining me as always is your co-host, Mr. Martin O'Dwyer.
Hello, Conor. How are we doing?
That's an interesting way to say the word hello. I'm good.
Yeah, I know why I turned into that guy from The Simpsons. Like, hello!
Hello! Yes! Yeah, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. It's good to be back. It does actually feel a bit weird sitting down after the long break we had over the holidays. But I'm excited. A lot of not a lot, but I had 2 good sessions post our break that came through, and we had probably the most insane session of D&D I've ever played. In your campaign?
With our last one? Yeah. Oh man. We'll get into it properly.
We are absolutely getting into that.
We had 2 good sessions actually, because there was the one leading up to that was quicker as well.
Oh yeah, of course. How did I forget that one?
But sorry, my throat is going at me today, so if I'm coughing or clearing my throat, I apologize to any listeners. But yeah, we had an insane session that I intended to be a very, very tough fight. I built it to be a tough fight, and then it was both. You guys had both the dice go against you in a lot of ways, and also be completely on your side in other ways, like in the most unfathomable ways. Yeah. But yeah, Martin, we're okay. We should preface this. We're calling this our anniversary episode. Yeah. It's not, because it's not the date we first published our episode 1, which is the 11th of December. That's well gone. We're almost a month away from that. Also, it's not we're 3 weeks out from 52 episodes, which would be a full year's worth of podcasting. Yeah. So we're in some sort of weird, grey, intangible zone that we're just deciding to call our anniversary episode.
I just had an idea. Do you remember we did a really good podcast once that we lost the time because someone forgot to turn their mic on?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if we do that as a special episode 52? We talk about that one, and we do that one properly.
What was the topic in that again?
Death.
Oh, right, ironic, yeah. Fittingly, I wanted to kill somebody after that one. Namely Martin. But yeah, no, that we should actually. We did a full episode. That's happened just 2 or 3 times now over the course of the year. Yeah. We've sat down to record something, and either my mic will be really poppy or crackly, and it's cutting in and out and it's not usable, or I think on a couple of occasions, I think you had your Twitch streaming stuff set up, so your audio settings are different, and it's either not. I think it's not recording you, or it's not recording me, one or the other.
And once the video files were just so large that I hadn't cleared 10 of them out, that my computer went no memory space halfway through an episode. Right, yeah.
You literally saw the error pop up when we were a good 50 minutes into an episode, and it was oh, by the way, you're full on memory, and you're oh crap, and it didn't save. It couldn't save that file. It wouldn't even save what it had done of the file, which would have been helpful. It was just oh, we can store 49 minutes of footage, and then we caught 50, and then they're oh, well, I guess we just gotta throw the whole lot in the bin. Sorry there. Good job, computers. Good job. We making our lives easier.
That one we did re-record, and you can absolutely tell.
I forget what episode. Do you know?
I can't even remember at this point, man. I just remember the episode starts, and both of us are "Welcome to the Micflayers Podcast."
Yeah, we're both we pretty much sit down and had the same 50-minute conversation again, which isn't really I guess it isn't really a problem for the listeners, other than the fact that the 2 of us are not entertained by it, because we're just repeating what we've said for the past hour.
It takes a good about an hour for us to pull ourselves out of that stupor and actually get into podcasting mode.
Yeah, and then that's actually why we didn't do that with the death episode. That was meant to be somewhere in the low 40s, I want to say. And then we were just it didn't work. It didn't get recorded. I think we both just said, look, let's come back to it tomorrow and let's do a totally different topic, because if we just rehash the same thing, it'll feel forced. Yeah. So we did something else instead, and it came out okay. And we said we'd come back to death at some point.
This is our little mini year.
It's inescapable.
Yeah. Well, I know one of our sessions recently kind of made that a questionable thing, but we'll get into that.
Death, it's coming.
Death is Death is optional when it comes to our campaign, apparently. Even when it's absolutely assured.
in our campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Should we jump into what happened in our past couple sessions?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I like.
Okay.
I have some fun stuff, but I really want to talk about our 2 sessions because, dear God, they were awesome.
So you guys are currently in a city called Bastow. Bastow is like the biggest mining town. It's built into the side of the Gothfell Peaks, and these mountains are literally the crumbled remains of an Earth Titan, a god like that fell here thousands of years ago. And because of that, the whole mountain is just so rich with gems and minerals and precious metals and stuff like that, that this city has thrived and become huge with its mining industry and stuff like that as a result. So it's a very, very wealthy city. You guys have been there, and you're doing a couple other bits, and there's some other intrigue happening there, but we won't get you into that. The main thing is that you guys confronted a dragon that came out of nowhere and swooped down and attacked the city. So you fought the dragon. You did a little bit of damage, but also it did a lot of damage to you, and then it like knocked over a couple of the buildings and flew away back up to the mountains. You guys found out that the dragon, you were hired by the Marquis to go and kill the dragon. But then you found out from the dragon themselves, the dragon's name is Giverel, the steel-clad serpent. You found out from Giverel that the Marquis has had, and the Marquis's family, going back a few generations, has had a long-standing deal with the dragon, where it's like, hey, look, you like precious metals? Cool. We'll give you like a cart full of precious metals a month if you can just leave our town alone. And the dragon's like, you know what? That's actually fine by me. As long as you keep providing me with the precious metals I want, then I'm perfectly happy to leave your little town alone and all that. And the town can produce a cart full of precious gold and silver and platinum relatively easily. They harvest so much of it from the mountains. So you found that out. You went back to talk to the Marquis, and then he was all like, what do you mean you didn't kill the dragon? I hired you to do that. And you eventually worked out a deal where you'd go up and you'd fight the dragon. You'd bring a cart with you, pretending like you guys are bringing the offering.
I believe we had to, as part of the agreement we made with the dragon at the time, for him not to bite off Wabu's arm.
That's correct, because Wabu has an adamantine ring that he cannot take off his finger. And the dragon, when the dragon smelled that, because he has an ability where he can smell precious metals in the air. Honestly, and when he smelled that ring,
was shitting myself the entire time because I have a full adamantine half plate set.
Yeah, I that one glossed over me a little bit when I was doing this.
I was very grateful it did.
Yeah, I was kind of because here's the thing: like gold, silver, and even platinum, very, very, very easy to acquire here in the mountains because it's just everywhere. All those precious metals. What can't be gotten very easily are things like mithril and adamantine. So what I was like, when the dragon could smell this powerful adamantine ring on Wabu's finger, it was like, oh, it's not just adamantine; it's magical, fantastic. And then he's like, I can take that off for you if you want. And then Wabu was like, can I keep my arm? He's like, probably not, but you'll have the ring off. And I was Rocket Raccoon in that moment, going, oh, I'll get that on. I was ready. If Mike gave me the green light for even half a second, I'm like, he bites your fucking arm off. I was so ready to take his arm. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But no, he was like, how about instead we go get you a cart full of metal from the town, and then we come back, and then you can have the ring along with the other cart. And you managed to roll a couple decent persuasion checks, and he was like, okay, that sounds pretty good, but you better come back with that ring, otherwise, death and destruction. Yeah, and then, so you came back with the cart, you went and fought the dragon. I built him partially, I started with the template of the adult mithril dragon that appears in Tome of Foes by Cobalt Press, which is a great stat block because he doesn't breathe an element, he breathes shards of metal, which I think is super, super cool. So I basically made him a little bit more buffed out than that. I gave him some good armor. I made him have a reactionary ability where he can use his wings as shields. I gave him a legendary action where he can swing his tail, and his tail is basically a great sword. It's so sharp and metallic on the outsides.
Hits like 1, 2.
It literally is. It's literally like it's 8d6.
I think so.
Plus 8.
I think you said it was like a storm giant's greatsword or something.
I think it's a fire giant's greatsword, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry, that was.
But I mean, like, but it's not even 2 legendary actions. It's 1 legendary action, so he can do that 3 times a turn every once or a round. And he did, and he was walloping Wabu with that multiple times. So yeah, he has that. He has the shielded wings, so that I kind of built him to be like a dragon as a knight, because he has his wings as shields and he has his tail as a sword, and he's all clad in armor, which is like his own scales made of metal. He has some abilities where he can literally shoot spikes out everywhere. His body's already covered in spikes, so if you run up and slap him with a sword, you take like 10 points of piercing damage. If you get in close, which is fine for you and Wabu, because you both barbs, and so you get in close, but you only take 5 damage each for each attack. And then he has this other ability where he can, I think I called it Mithril Missile, as a play on Magic Missile.
I like that though. I like that.
And basically, all not a set number, but all creatures of his choosing within like 120 feet, it's Magic Missile, so they just take damage. As all these, he can basically grow the spikes a bit longer, and then they fire out in all directions. Kind of like are they called the singing birds or the whistling birds in Mandalorian?
You're asking the wrong guy, buddy.
You know the thing I'm talking about.
I think so. Yeah.
The little wrist rockets he has, and they all fly out in all directions and take out anyone nearby him.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that. So they all fly out and do like 2d6 damage or something like that. He's big. He's got a lot of health. He's got a lot of armor. And he deals a lot of damage. Like, even hitting him does damage. He does damage as an action. He does damage as a reaction. He can do damage as part of his legendary actions. Mm-hmm. He has a lot of ways to damage people.
And he can cast Blur.
And he casts Blur. I gave him a couple of different spells. One sec, I think I have a stat block here.
Blur really messed us up though.
Blur was way. Oh, I gave him lightning vulnerability because. Yeah. It made sense he's all metal in my mind.
I've never been angry at myself for not rereading an item description. Then when I found out he had lightning vulnerability, and that fucking runestone takes an hour to apply, which I could have done walking through the goddamn mountains.
Yeah. So in this homebrew setting, the guys there, you can pick up basically whetstones to sharpen your tools, but they'll often have giant runes carved into them, and they're elemental ones. So if you spend time sharpening your sword or your spear or whatever with that stone, it takes on the elemental property of the rune. I think if it takes an hour to apply, but then it lasts for like 8 hours.
Yeah.
So it's a full adventuring day's worth of it.
I spent a week making that, and then on the mission where it would have been the perfect tool. I would have ended that fight way sooner. I'm so upset. I'm legitimately still so upset at myself.
Now you got it for next time. But yeah, so he has lightning vulnerability. I'm
hoping next time I can just throw lightning bolts at someone like I've been planning for the last 6 months.
Yeah. Let's see. He has a thing he has called Guarded Move, where he can move up to half his speed without provoking opportunity attacks. The Mithril Missile thing costs 2 actions. It's 3d6 plus 3 force damage is what it does. And again, if you're within 120 feet of him, you're guaranteed to get hit with that because it's like a magic missile. He has, let me see, so his spells, he has Blur. Oh, at one point, so I cast Blur early on, and I'm like, this will be helpful to mitigate damage early on. And it did. And then later in the fight, I was thinking, maybe I'll cast Haste now to get an extra attack action. And I thought, because he was kind of getting low on health, and I'm like, maybe he'd start, what's the word? Not quite death throws, but getting frantic. Yeah, he'd start getting desperate and start throwing out way more attacks. I thought about it.
The third phase of every Souls fight.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, okay, well, he still gets a +2 to his AC with haste. But I'm like, a +2 is not the same thing as disadvantage in all attacks against him.
Yeah. Advantage on deck saves as well, though.
It would have been advantage on deck save, but he actually has a +9 on deck saves anyway.
Jesus.
Yeah, he's a really dexterous. But yeah, so you had haste. I'm like, okay, if I did haste, what I'd get an action where I can do a bite and 2 claws. Oh, his claws also do a thing where if they strike you, you bleed for 6 turns after it. And it's the way I worked it out is that you take the initial damage on your next turn. You'll take 6 points. And I think I got Gavin a couple times with this. I told him to take a d6, put it on the desk in front of him, and then next turn you'll take 6 points of damage. Then you can turn it down, and the turn after that you'll take 5, and you keep turning the dice until it gets to 1. And once it gets to 1, the bleeding is just stopped. But you can also stop it like by patching yourself up, or making a medicine check, or using magic.
So it's 21 damage, I think. If you just leave it down all the way down.
6/5 is 11 plus 4 is 15 plus 3 is 18 plus 2
Plus 1.
21 points. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's slow acting, so you have a lot of time. Like and you can use an action, or you can use a healer's kit, or you can use any sort of magical healing would also just stop it as well.
Yeah. It was so late in the fight by the time I got that. I just let it run down. I had enough health to like just leave it run down, because I was more concerned with the fucking giant dragon that was kicking everyone's ass.
Yeah, he's really powerful, and I thought about doing that. So he would have made those 2 claw attacks, a bite attack, and his tail attack using his hasted action. He would have been really, really lethal. But the thing is, you definitely would have hit him every round then, because he was still blocking some of them. Like his armor class is 20.
Yeah.
But then he has his reaction wing ability, shield wing. He can use a reaction on a single attack to add +5 to his armor class. So it's essentially a shield, but it doesn't last until the next round comes around like shield normally would.
Yeah, I think I hit him like less than 7 times, and I think like I hit him 3 times with my action surge to try and drop blur. Like he was just, that was a hell of a monster, Connor.
His con saves are also +10, so like you would have had to do like 40 odd points of damage or something like that, or 30 something points, maybe 40 points, and then like to have a good chance of beating it, because I mean he needs to beat a 10 in most. If you do anything less than a 20 on a single attack in damage, he only needs to beat a 10, which means he can only fail that on a nat 1.
Yeah.
So
I can maybe
which is technically a saving throw, and he does have legendary resistances. So
I can maybe do that in a round, but not in an attack.
Yeah, again, if anyone was to crit or anything, sorry,
he got Aerith crit him real bad at the start.
Aerith hit him really hard, which is why I went for Aerith so hard after that. And Aerith hit in a hole for a lot of it.
He spent like 5 rounds in a hole.
he spent like 5 rounds hiding in the hole. And on the second round, I had the dragon go straight for him, bury its head in the hole, and like bite. I think it bit him and scratched him a couple of times. Like I was actually, they just updated D&D Beyond. We discovered this in this fight.
Yes,
they updated D&D Beyond to allow me as a DM to see live updates on when you take damage or heal up or anything like that.
I love that, by the way. That is one of the best updates they have done.
It's so good. But yeah, so I was watching, and none of the rest of you knew how close to Aerith, how close to death Aerith was for the entire fight, because he only has about 70 or 80 health.
Yeah, and the
dragon wrecked him.
Quiet, like he keepps very quiet about his hit points. Like you'll know if I'm getting low.
Oh yeah, you'll be like, oh, you'll be making faces and kind of stuff like that.
You'll see me just looking through all of my, like, you won't see my sheets, but you'll see me like reading lots of stuff while I'm just looking for a way out.
Yeah, but yeah. So and then like I remember he was like, he made a really. At one point, Wabu went down, and he was the nearest person to it. He was in the hole, but Wabu was just up outside the hole. And he made a very tactical decision, because he looked at the dice on his desk, and it was going to do like 4 points of damage or something like that. And he had 6 points left. So he's like, I know I can go and heal Wabu with my action now. And then on the next turn or whatever, I'll take 4 points and be on 2. But I know I have 1 round left. And I'm like, you're playing with some fire there that I would not be comfortable with if I were you. Yeah. But he made a very tactical judgment in that moment. Went and healed Wabu with his action rather than patching himself up. Got Wabu back up at a few hit points, and then got back in the hole. And then on the next round took 4 damage. Now he's down to 2.
Yeah.
I think then because you take the damage at the start of your turn, so then he took the damage and he immediately went, right, I'm going to drink this health potion or whatever. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because he was at the very top of the initiative as well. And I was watching his health go from 6 to 2 to 10 to 4. Like, it was just bouncing around in like single digits and in the tens and stuff like that for a while. But yeah, eventually you guys, we have to talk about the killing blow, because it was... you know that scene in The Simpsons where the guy in the Cayman Islands is talking about that particular customer's illegal account. He's like, oh no, I shouldn't have said the account was illegal. Yeah. Oh no, I shouldn't have said he was a customer. that was me when Dan got the winning blow with Arkham, who is our halfling warlock. He was hanging back, as he should, because he's quite squishy for most of the fight. And at a certain point where I had Wabu down and Aerith is really messed up and you'd taken a good few hits as well, I was like, I haven't hit Dan at all. I'm gonna go and wreck him for a minute. I'm gonna go over and I'm gonna bite and double claw, and I'm gonna do a lot of damage and put the fear in him a little bit. And I moved the dragon over there with his legendary action, so he can move half his speed. So he flew over there. He's right next to him, but like what I didn't realize, it's Dan's turn next, and I'm like in my head, all I thought is, okay, if he tries to move away, he'll get an attack opportunity. So at least I'll get to probably hit him once. What I didn't think is that Dan would stand his ground. That not only that, I give Dan this bloody ring.
It's so good to see that from another DM for once.
I gave Dan this ring where it's basically he wanted it based off of the Dresden Files, which I haven't read, but Dan's been
I think it's like
whatever.
Harry Dresden has like a cane that absorbs like a certain amount of kinetic energy every time he moves it when he walks with it, and it'll like
it's a ring. So I think as his hand is swinging as he walks, it's constantly just building up little bits of momentum and kinetic energy, or potential energy, I suppose it would be, over the course of like a week or whatever.
Yeah.
And then if he hits someone, and Dan told me when he got it, he's like, oh, there's like, he's always worried it might go off accidentally if it because there's so much unstable energy in it. So he built a ring with a couple of monster parts you guys got, and he had someone build it for him, and it does the same thing. It's like it can store a total of like 5d8, I think it is.
Yeah.
And every day that you wake up in the morning, you have to make a roll. On the first day, if you get a natural 1, you take a d8 force damage immediately because the ring accidentally goes off. On the second day, it's a 2 or less. On the third day, it's 3 or less. So at the very most, when it's fully charged, you'll have a 25% chance of it going off in the morning because you'll have a 5 or less, it will go off.
1 in 4. I can't wait for the morning. Like, all right, we're gonna rest before this boss fight. And like, all of you guys are startled awake by Arkham screaming in pain in the middle of the night.
That's true, they are.
Team Rockets.
Team Rocket, like, yeah. So it's really good, but if he lets it charge up fully, it gets 5d8 of force damage that he can apply to. I think I said he can apply it to any melee attack, but maybe it's. I'd have to look at the stat. Oh, one second. What was I saying? I have it here.
Yeah.
I think it's down as like kinetic ring or something like that. I'm already in my homebrew thing, so it's fine. There we go. Ring of kinetic charging. Let's see here now. Temperature force, the target must. Oh yeah. So when the ring, when the energy is released, when you successfully hit with a melee attack against a creature or object, so it has to be a melee attack. The potential energy inside is released. When the energy is released, the ring takes. It has to release all of its. You can't just release a d8 or 2 at a time. It has to be all of its energy at once. The damage was force, and then the target also has to make a save or be knocked back 10 feet. So Dan has that on his hand. He wears the ring on his hand, and it's constantly building up energy. I go up to Dan. I'm like, he's the squishy warlock. The dragon's going to hit him a couple of times just to put the fear in him, and we'll see how things go next round then. Or he'll try and move away. He'll flee because he doesn't want to be up close on this dragon. Dan is like, he's thinking for a second, and then he's just like, I'm going to try something. It might be very stupid. He's like, I'm going to cast Shocking Grasp. And I was like, okay. I'm like, oh no. Shocking Grasp is a lightning spell. I'm like, oh no. Dan has that ring. Oh no. He gets advantage on the dragon because the dragon's made of metal. and there was just these 3 stages of realization, and I was like, oh no. So Dan gets advantage on the roll. He's like, I'm just going to slap it with my bare hand. I'm going to slap the dragon, but we're going to put all the force damage in if it hits. And I'm like, you can totally do that. So he makes the attack. He has advantage. He does lightning damage, which is doubled. Actually, he has advantage. He crits.
Mm-hmm.
So he does lightning damage. It's doubled because the dragon's vulnerable. It's also doubled because it's a crit. He then rolls his 5d8 force damage, which is also doubled because of the crit. And he doesn't even roll particularly high, but he does like 60-something points of force damage, force and lightning damage, and bang, kills the dragon instantly. And I was just like, that ended so quickly. I was in my head, I was like, that dragon's got like a round and a half, maybe 2 rounds left in him. And Dan was just like, electric force bitch slap and kill the dragon instantly. And I was like, wow, that was insane.
Yeah, that was the moment I realized about that was the moment when I was like, got uber salty, and I was like, I could have, oh god, yeah, no, fuck that, I hate that.
So yeah, it was a great kill. We ended the session there. Then the next session, I'm ranting on for a bit. Actually, do me a quick favor. What time are we at? Because I didn't set a clock because I'm out of practice.
25 minutes.
Is that all?
Yeah, well, like 25, 20 if you want to be specific about it.
I do, Martin. I've decided I do want to be specific about it. Thank you for that. So 25. Okay, cool. So I'm setting a clock here for myself. On the next day, you guys head back to town. You bring a trophy from the dragon. Actually, no, sorry. You spent like a good you spent hours and hours.
Yeah, we didn't long rest either. We like short rested after that. We didn't long rest.
Yeah. But like you spent hours and hours like carving up this dragon. You're like, I want some scales, I want some teeth, I want its heartstrings, you wanted its like femur or whatever.
Yep.
Like you guys tore like this dragon to pieces. Went back to town. Kind of went to go and turn in your quest essentially with the Marquis. In the time that you were gone, the Marquis had gotten in touch with some of the other nobility in Temerai, which is the city you guys recently fled because you were involved with the resistance, and the town is currently under occupation by the Empire. So he got in touch with people he knows in Temerai. They were like, "Oh my God, you know those people? Those people are crazy criminals. They like blew up a ship in the middle of the town, and they've attacked this person and all this." He's like, "Yeah, no, they're bad news." So he's like, "Oh no," and then they're like, "Don't worry, we'll immediately send some Inquisitors to help you." And he's like, "Oh, brilliant, okay." So you guys came back, went to go meet with the Marquis. Little did you know that there were... the Marquis had his right-hand man, who was a dragonborn paladin, sort of, leave the room. And he was coming back, and you decided, you're like, I don't trust this. So you decided to have a look out the door. And as you did, you saw him outside talking with someone who's very obviously dressed in Empire colors. And a fight kicked off, and it was... you guys thought it was like the Marquis, the Dragonborn, and this Inquisitor, but there were actually two other Inquisitors because I was using the thing from Van Richten's, the Inquisitors of the Blade, or the Sword, who can cast greater invisibility. And you didn't realize there was two other ones already in the room with you. Metal Gear Solid reference there for people. If you don't know what you want, I'm not going to explain it.
I nearly broke my headset.
If you don't, Snake, the guys who stole the active camo were in the elevator with you.
That makes sense, conversely.
Yeah. So yeah, it was basically that kind of situation. The fight was going
badly.
You guys got some good hits, but it was going badly. And at one point, everyone was unconscious except for Arkham because he was on the broom hovering up in the air. And you got downed by the Dragonborn. Wabu got down by the other Inquisitor, and then the last Inquisitor, because the other Inquisitor accidentally got its invisibility knocked off, so he was just fighting in the open. But there was a second one there that was invisible for the entire fight, and you guys just were not landing blows on him, so he was not making any saves for his concentration.
Yeah.
And then so one of them is standing over Wabu, one of the Dragonborn standing over you. The Marquis turns around and he's like, "Just throw down your weapons and surrender." He's trying to give you an option to just come in quietly and be arrested. He's like, "Throw down your weapons and just surrender." And then I think Arkham tried to
I don't believe he gave us that option. I think it was Arkham tried to bargain that option, and because you had Arkham make a persuasion check and he failed, and then your man just went, "Kill the killed."
Yeah. Yeah, there was something. I remember he kind of... maybe in my head I was thinking...
It was before that as well, he had tried to kill Aerith.
Is this... Oh, sorry, who's this now who tried to kill Aerith?
So, it was
Marquis?
one of the Inquisitors, because one of the Inquisitors downed Aerith before everyone else got downed. Aerith was downed, and he was on, he had, one death saving throw failed already. And then...
Yes.
You went to finish the job.
You're right. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? So Aerith was down first. I think then Wabu went, then you went, and then at that point it was like, oh, things are grim. Actually, sorry, Arkham was up, so was your dog Frost,
who was feared again.
Who was also I forgot to mention that Frost was feared or frightened of the dragon for the entirety of the dragon fight. He hid in the corner. He couldn't get near the dragon because of the frightened
He
condition.
did nothing.
He did nothing. Now, to be fair, I don't think he took a little bit of damage, but not much.
No, he took no damage. He took no damage.
Oh, no damage at all.
No, because you feared him, and then you had to run all the way back.
Yeah, so he was just hanging back the entire fight.
Yeah.
So that was Frost with Amber Frost, and in this fight, Frost did get a few hits in this one, but he also he did get feared again.
I would say 85% of the fight.
Yeah. We need to work on Frost's wisdom saves.
He has better wisdom than luck. He's got a 16 wisdom.
Doesn't he also have Indomitable?
Yes, it failed. And you also give him advantage when I went down because you're like, oh, he saw his and you let me make the save at the start of the thing. You're like, oh, he just sees his master go down, like he gets a surge of adrenaline.
Yeah, I thought like, okay, he's just seen his master go down. This is a war dog.
Yeah.
If ever there's a time for him to get the let out and go, it's now. So I think I let you roll.
Let me roll
at the start.
At the start, and with advantage.
And he still failed.
I rolled a 1 and a 3.
Yeah. Something else I forgot to mention. I should state this fight happened later in the day after the dragon fight. So you guys had like short rested, but you didn't long rest.
Yeah.
And a lot of you were still missing some abilities and stuff like that.
I actually had most of my stuff because we short rested because all my
fighter stuff.
All my big stuff is at the moment is mostly fighter stuff, and my barb stuff doesn't run out because it's either my reaction or just a feature of my rage. But Arkham would have been down a couple of spell slots, and Aerith was down. I think like his blood maledicts or long rest.
I'd have to check that, but yeah. So yeah, it was basically that they weren't.
We
you guys weren't at full spec, like. Yeah. Yes, you're right about that, because what happened was the final invisible Inquisitor, when he saw how the room was, he did a jump. He can like teleport as a bonus action. He teleported into the air right next to Arkham, who's on his broom, and he was going to make one swipe as he dropped down from that position. He made the attack and missed. And then directly below Arkham was Aerith, who had already failed a death save.
He had one death save done already.
So he landed right above him, and I'm like, okay, he can't teleport again, so he can't get back up to Arkham to try and make another swipe. But Aerith is basically like lying unconscious between his legs right now. So he's like, okay, well, what's he gonna do? And like, I was there, and I was going, oh, I mean, I don't really have a choice. While I was doing that, Gavin was messaging me, and he was like, do it, drive it home, don't be a pussy about it, make the point.
He was sending similar messages to me, being like, if he doesn't kill me here.
Yeah, he was. I see my phone on the table keeps lighting up, and he's like, do it, fucking do it. And he meant it. Like Gavin is like, of all the people in the party, Gavin has the least attachment, I think, to his character. I think he likes his character a lot, but and he loves playing him and stuff, and he put a lot of time into him. But I also think that if his character died tomorrow, Gavin is the person who would be the least disappointed. He'd be like, brilliant, let's make a new character, you know.
He doesn't have a custom dice box made specifically for his character.
No, he does not. So Gavin was doing that, and I was like, yeah, I mean, look, I really have no option here. I'm going to have to make an attack. So to kind of make it dramatic, what I did was I described the Inquisitor dropping his invisibility, looking directly up at Arkham and pulling his hood back, and kind of smirking at him like, I'm going to kill your friend now. And then I rolled the attack with advantage because he's prone right in front of him. I rolled the attack with advantage, and I got a 16. And I'm like, Aerith's AC is 16, right? I'm like, Aerith, what's your AC? And he's just like 18. And I'm like, what? Somehow with advantage and you being unconscious, he still missed. And so the only way I could explain it is that he looked up at Arkham to be like dramatic and kind of make a point about it. And while doing that, went to go stab down and missed to stab the floor as a result because he wasn't looking right. And he wasted a second attack. So I was like, I don't believe that. That was insane. We go around. It's the next round, and I think that's when Arkham tried to bargain with the Marquis. I think he failed the
he failed the
persuasion.
Yeah, he got.
And then I think the Marquis was all like, oh, just throw down your weapons, let it go. And then Arkham was just like, there is no way I'm going back to jail, which is a very valid point because they had a rough time in jail.
Yeah, they did.
So at this point, then the Dragonborn is over you. You're face down, flayed out on the ground. The Dragonborn is standing over you with a great axe.
Yeah.
And he's holding his action and he's waiting for his for the Marquis, who is his lord, to give him the command. He's not going to do it without his lord's command, you know. And he's holding his action. And when Arkham says, "I'm not doing that. I'm not going to give up," he points at your man and goes, "Do it." And he attacks you.
Yep.
And brings the hammer down on you, or brings the axe down on you.
At this point, I had sent you a character sheet about 20 minutes previous.
You had done, yeah. So that happened, and then so I rolled again, and I here's the I rolled again, and I rolled crap. I rolled like a 3 and a 4. But they were both below 5 anyway. With advantage, they were both below 5, and I'm like, and even though he has like a +9 or +10 or something like that, I'm like, that's not enough to hit you. So so I'm struggling to describe how that would even make sense. And I'm like, oh, you do have like adamantine armor. So I'm like, oh, it hits the back plate of your armor, and you just hear this ring kind of echo throughout the room. And he doesn't know the armor is there because your cloak is covering it, so he doesn't know there's a back plate, and he hits it direct on. And because it's adamantine, his axe just bounces straight off of it. In the next round, things turned around dramatically. Arkham used his action to heal Aerith, I want to say, and then he feed him a potion.
He healed me.
Was
no,
it you he healed?
no. What he did was and full credit to Dan. This was probably the game saving play, or campaign saving rather, because we were all gonna die.
I was genuinely like the thought, and it hasn't come up ever in the campaign so far, but I was genuinely at a point where like I thought about what if this character dies before, and how I will write that in and how it will work inside the game. That's the only time in this campaign so far where I've been like, do I just stop the campaign? So do we just start a different campaign? Do I have to start do I just have to give up on this story, and we'll come back in 10 years time in the future in this, and all the repercussions will be there? So yeah,
but full credit to him, he used his action to feed Aerith a greater healing potion, I believe it was, and then uses his bonus action, looks at Wabu and says, "Get the fuck up and kill these motherfuckers," and you cast Healing Word, and Wabu like rises between the two Inquisitors of both swords, just like ready to murder. And then he saved my fucking life by running full speed across the room with his rage and pushing the guy off me, so he wasn't standing over me anymore.
Yes, that was it.
And
because he got up, and when he got up, it was his turn.
Yeah,
he immediately made 2 attacks. Oh no, 1 attack, and like just I described it as he stood up, he just sliced up this Inquisitor and just bisected him.
Yeah,
and then he used all his movement to hop over a table and run to you, and he used his second action to shove your man, and he succeeded. And he pushed the Dragonborn back, so it was like you on the ground. It was like Wabu protecting you and the Dragonborn here. And the thing is, Wabu did not have the health to be protecting you right there, but he did it anyway, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And he stood over you.
Yeah. Then Dan healed me, and I got back up. And then because I was up, I was able to use the thing I wanted to use before I got knocked unconscious, which was my Sphere's Call of the Moon ability. So I can heal everybody and get some attacks off. So I get up, and because it's now after dark, it's 3d6, and I actually get a pretty nice roll. I think I got a 12. So like, everyone within 30 feet is mile. I got 12 temporary hit points, which is big. And also Wabu, who is standing in front of the Dragonborn who just tried to kill me, who I told I would kill him if he doesn't kill me when he did this. I go, cut his head off, and Wabu did just that.
Oh, that's right. Yes, because as part so the Call of the Moon thing with the spear, it gives you 2d6 temporary hit points to all your allies within 30 feet. If it's daytime, but if it's after dark, it gives you 3d6 instead.
It does.
And it also lets you. Its higher feature is that each person can either use half their movement to move towards you without provoking opportunity attacks, so you can kind of regroup, or that person can use their reaction if they have it to make a single weapon attack. And Wabu was right there, made the attack on the guy, and just cut his head clean off. And I think he wounded him in the shoulder, and then your man was down, and I'm like, he's basically dead. So I was like, how do you want to do this?
Oh, no, I fucked up his shoulder because I crit him before he knocked me unconscious.
Oh, there you go. Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah. You wrecked his arm, yeah. And then I just describe, like, he gets down, he's on his knees, he's looking up at Wabu. Wabu's there with his swords, and he's just kind of, he's not happy, but he's like, I've served my master, and I've served him well. And he just accepts that this is his moment. And Wabu cuts his head clean off. Done. So the Inquisitor went down. The one Inquisitor went down. The Dragonborn went down. The Marquis made a beeline for a secret passage in a bookshelf and escaped. And then the last Inquisitor was left with all you guys. And he'd taken no damage so far, but he took a couple hits then in the next round or so. I think he tried to protect the Marquis.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And then Frost decided to be useful for the first time in the fight and passed his fear. And that was really helpful because that guy.
Did he pass his fear, or was it the fact that the Dragonborn was now dead and he was no longer feared?
Dragonborn was dead. That was it. Yeah, the Dragonborn died, so Frost wasn't afraid anymore. So he decided to contribute, and yeah, very very helpful because at one point the Inquisitor tried to run away, and Frost has a knock prone save on his bite attack, and he got it. And that guy basically tried to run away. Frost grabbed him by the ankle and pulled him onto the ground, and then the rest of the party came in and went stab, 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 stab. Yeah, and it did not end well for him.
No, yeah. So that, like, honestly, the thing is, he was getting away if you guys hadn't, if Frost hadn't knocked him prone, because he took the opportunity of attack, and I was taking a risk there, but I like it's the only way he's going to get away if he takes his opportunity attack.
I think it might have only been Frost beside him as well, like, so not exactly the most dangerous person to take that chance with.
Yeah, so he was more, and he had, like I said, he'd taken very little damage over the fight, so he takes it. Frost hits. He fails his strength save. He falls prone, so he can't actually run away. And then everyone runs in, and your man's prone, and everyone's just like, advantage, 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 stab, 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 dead. And I'm like, all right, that was over. That guy went from having no damage for like the first like 5 or 6 rounds or whatever, however long the fight lasted, to being mercilessly stabbed to death in the final round.
We also learned that Aerith is a hell of a hand with a scimitar. Dear God, Aerith's starting getting into melee combat only recently, and dear God, the damage he does with a scimitar. He's had
scimitars, I think, for a while, or a scimitar for a while, but he just doesn't. He's primarily a ranged guy, so.
Yeah, I was not expecting him to just come in and slice that guy up as like he did, but yeah, it was an awesome session, and I believe we then fled on the back of a giant sapphire scarab beetle, I believe, out the window and off into the mountains because we really didn't know where to go.
Yeah. So yeah, things ended on a really crazy note, and we haven't been back now since. We haven't played for about 3 weeks.
We also didn't get the dragon's horde.
The dragon's horde?
The dragon's horde, yeah. We didn't get the dragon's
horde.
horde.
Sorry. I thought you said the dragon sword, not the dragon's horde. Yes.
We also didn't get paid.
You also didn't get paid. That's right, because he tried to kill you instead.
I had so much that gold was planned for. And
I think he tried to search the mountains. He spent a few hours searching the mountains, trying to see if there's any sign of the dragon's horde, not dragon sword. Yeah. But yeah, couldn't find it. Thing is, like, this dragon's been here a long time, and multiple adventurers before you guys have tried to find the horde. So it's very much a kind of it's out there, but it's more than you can. It will take more than like a single investigation check or perception check, and 8 hours of work. This is the kind of thing you may need to be searching the mountains for weeks or even months. Now that the dragon's gone, you can do that more or less safely as well. But yeah. So yeah, that was the crazy couple sessions we had the last 2 times we played in the Asteria game. It was dramatic. Like I said, that fight took a turn, and I made it to be challenging.
It was extremely challenging.
Yeah, and I also had a very if you guys decided, we're not going to go back to the bar until tomorrow, we're going to sleep and then we're going to visit him in the morning, I'd have been totally fine with that as well. Might have made a bit of a difference. But I also don't. I was kind of planning that this is something that would happen after the dragon fight, so you'd already be weak. And the Marquis is kind of banking on that too. He's like, we'll get him when they come back from the dragon fight. But yeah, it was one of those moments where in the middle of the fight, X amount of people were unconscious. This person was like about to land a hit on who or whatever, and I was just kind of like, I am not in control right now. This is out of my control. My hands are not on the wheel.
Yeah, I got that feeling about turn 3 for myself, not for you. For myself, I was like, this is no, this isn't good. When I got to my first actual action, and I hadn't harmed any of them. I had taken half my hit points and damage, and I had hurt my party member for 30 HP. I was like, this isn't going well.
That's right, because Aerith ran up to you in the doorway, but didn't realize the Inquisitor had mind controlled you, and basically told you to go around and make 2 attacks on Aerith straight away. So, yeah, it. And then I think, was it a breath weapon? Was it with the necrotic breath weapon that got from the Dragonborn?
I think that was just fear, wasn't it? That was just a fear breath.
No, I think. No, his fear. I'd have to double check. Maybe it is a breath weapon as well, but it does necrotic damage as well. Or maybe he hit you with his axe a couple of times, because I know that does like a few dice worth of necrotic and then a d12 because it's a great axe.
It certainly does. It certainly fucking does.
So that was it. You said you had some interesting stuff with your
your game. We're rapidly approaching the end of our whole like what's turned from standard fantasy giant arc into sci-fi fantasy giant arc with the techno Vikings, as my party have so lovingly decided to christen them. So basically the guys are for recap, they're exploring all these floating castles that they found in the sky above a village that one of them is from, that had basically been overtaken by a storm, and all of the inhabitants had vanished. They jump into the storm, get up, find themselves in a floating castle. They work their way out of the castle, fighting a couple of mechanical constructs. They destroy an anti-magic circle that was keeping the doors shut, and then head outside. And outside on the wall is it's basically a warning from the owner of the castle, the Storm Monarch. And then they find a teleportation circle. Basically, it's Stargate. Where you slot the runes in.
I really appreciate that.
And it basically it's like a Stargate in a circuit where like there's stones, specific runes on them, and when you slot them in, they correspond to certain castles. But only certain castles can go to other castles. Like you can't go from castle 1 to castle 9. You go like one can go to 2 and 3. 3 can go to 5 and I think 5 and 6. 2 goes to 4. And then I have it all written down on the page. I made it way too complicated for myself, and I also had to fill 9 castles with stuff. But they went to 1 after a couple of different boss fights, and this one was different in that it was this large, almost fully intact, which is the first one that they've come across. Most of them seem to show damage from like dragons or battles or something like that. This one is this like fully intact, 8-sided building, and one of the I want to say one of the walls are like they kind of why can't I think of the goddamn name? The turret. One of the walls of the turret has been replaced by a giant like observatory structure with like a huge telescope coming out of it. So they go in, and on they discovered that they go in, and there's the parts that just go above, and then there's 4 floors that go straight down, all in that octagonal pattern. And they find the first floor they go into seems to be kind of an entry floor. They find like a room that has a library with a bunch of books in it, but it looks more like a personal collection rather than that thing. Then they go into the other one, and then they find an observatory with like star charts of all asteroid impacts on the continent that they're on for the last 200 years. There's also a map of the giant cosmos on the wall, and they do also use the giant telescope. It's like I set it up like, do you know, like when you're getting your eyes tested and you have to pull the thing down.
Yeah,
it's like that, where like you sit into this giant do you know the Asmodeus chair out of DC? I think that's it's like the god of knowledge in the New Gods in DC has this chair, the Mobius chair, that's it, sorry. And he like sits in this chair. At one point Batman gets into the chair, but it gives him knowledge of everything. And so it started like that, where they sit down into it, and then this big huge contraption lowers over their head, and they just see out through the telescope, and they see this like twinkling red star way off in the distance. And that's also marked on the cosmology map, the giant cosmology map. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. They start descending the floors. The first floor that they find has like plans on the wall for the creation of the the sky swimmers that they fought previously. They also find plans for like a giant sized sky ship shaped like a longship pulled by one of these creatures for transporting troops. And then they go down to the next floor, and that floor is like an Arcana Forge, and they find like shards of because my Blood Hunter had a really, really good investigation check. I think got like a 26. He moved a bunch of rubble aside and found a small case with I think it was 3 ingots of what I'm calling storm steel. And it's like it's a steel ingot that's been left out on a mountain peak overnight in a thunderstorm to absorb the magical energy of the storm, and it has like inbuilt lightning properties. So like if you forge a weapon from it, it does an extra D4 lightning damage.
That's pretty cool.
So we found some of that, which will be interesting to see what they do with it. They keep descending the floors anyway, and they go down to the bottom one. They find that there's a statue of the old giant leader who was defeated by a hero ages past, called Donnerstein, and he's like standing there, and he's got like his hand out like that. He's got, I think, yeah, that was it. He's got like, I think it was like this or something, and then they basically work. It's a puzzle with the statue, and they work it out, and they press a few buttons, and basically the statue's arm swings around to come out like this, and like it's like reaching out towards them. And when it does, they see that there's a little rune carved into the palm of the statue, and it says lightning. So my sorcerer reaches out and touches the palm and casts Shock and Grasp, and that lights up a rune hidden on the base of the statue. There's 9 runes. She does that 9 more times. And then all of them light up. The statue slides back, and what looked like a kind of fancy castle observatory reveals these like chrome steel octagonal steps that descend very sci-fi style into a sub basement. They go down in there, and they basically find like a Doom style scientific facility set up, and they go through various things. They find like evidence of like vivisection and like experimentation on like live subjects. They find all these like really horrific like scientific abuses going on. And also a lot of dead things, which my Bloodhunter is able to go grim psychometry and figure out what's going on. So they're able to kind of go through things, and they come across some doors.
Grim psychometry, I swear.
Yeah, the day he just solved the puzzle, because I made the puzzle with skulls, was the day I was like, I need to rethink how I approach things with this. But basically they figured out, and there's like these panels very similar to what you did actually with the Micflayer stuff, the Mindflayer, Jesus. They touch the panel, make an intelligence check, and if they're all high enough, the door opens. So they go through that, and eventually they make their way into this place that they see listed called the Carrion Forge. And they go in there, and there's banks of computers with all this data on it, just running tests basically. And then there's these 2 huge steel tubes either side of the middle of the room that are locked closed, and one has the initials ABS inscribed on it, and the other one has the initials NULL inscribed on it. And the whole way through, they've seen like arms and limbs and various kind of creatures suspended in like tubes of green material with like blades like grafted onto the arm bones and stuff. Like looks like they're like making like biological weapons.
They're making Deadpools from that terrible movie.
Oh god. But anyway, they're exploring this, and they go to leave the room, and a screen descends from the ceiling, and it's the science advisor to the old leader of the giants, Mimir, which I thought was a good name for a science advisor for giants. Mimir, the smartest man in the universe in Norse mythology. And they discover that he has heavily mechanically enhanced himself. Basically, this half of his face is from here on is like biological. This eye has been replaced by a big sensor eye, and there's all like steel and chromium body parts now. He's basically like half mechanical. And he looks at them, and he goes, he's like, oh, I've been watching you since you've come in here. I'm very interested in what you propose. And he like specifically addresses my sorcerer, who this is kind of her backstory. He goes, you're very interesting. You're dragon blood. You're the blood of our old enemy. There's something about you that I don't yet understand, but I will. And they're kind of get argued. He goes, let's see how you do. And he like reaches back and hits a button on the wall, and the 2 tubes open, and an Aeorian absorber and an Aeorian nullifier come out, and probably weirdly, for what I thought was just be a mid-tier fight for my guys, was one of the hardest, because they had all grouped together. So the nullifier just runs forward right up on them, and within 10 feet, and casts what's that 8th level spell, anti-magic field. Yeah. And catches the whole party. Yeah. Actually, no, everyone but my swashbuckler rogue. And I go, okay, Mandrai, our wildfire spirit, your summoned wildfire spirit disappears. All your magic items except for your vestiges all stop working.
Ooh, I like that the vestiges would still work.
Yeah, I felt, because it's like they're a tier above regular magic items. Like they still worked, but basically anything else they didn't work. Any magical class abilities didn't work. Any spells couldn't be cast. At one point, my it was a real sickener. At one point, my sorcerer, she manages to get out of the anti-magic field, and I described to her how she can feel all the magic return, like it rushes through her veins again. And she looks at the guy and casts disintegrate straight on him. But if you read the wording of anti-magic fields,
can't pass in or out of the field.
So the crackling green energy beam goes straight through, hits the barrier and stops. Yeah. And she's so upset, and I could see everyone being like, no, and I felt gutted for her as well. But then
that's the equivalent of wasting your ult in Overwatch.
yeah, but then my Bloodhunter reminded me I hadn't rolled concentration checks for the attacks he had done the previous round. Rolled the first one, nat 1. Anti-magic field is gone. Disintegrate does hits him for like 84 damage. I'm like, nice. Oh, okay, we're into string now. And once that's down, it's literally like, all right, it's like Rock Lee taking off the leg weights. Everyone just starts going. And yeah,
I watch that scene like so often. I'll just be bored, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch that scene for the 8th time in the last 2 days. That's what I run to in the gym. I play that, and I set the bloody treadmill as high as I'm able to cope with, and then for 5 minutes solid, I will just book it. And it's I love it so much.
Yeah, but they basically cure them anyway. The screen, the settings again, and the science officer Mimir is like, you're very interesting. The fact you dealt with them quite handily is very impressive. He goes, come pay me a visit, and clicks another button, and like a series of doors opens into another section, leads them in. One section leads straight down, and there's tunnels off to the left and tunnels off to the right. So they go off to the left and they start checking out this area. And in this area they find like 2 or 3 other side doors they can go into, and one of the doors they go into has this like, it's like a specimen wall basically, and one of them is an entire nervous system with organs just suspended in liquid, like, you know,
with no flesh and no bones.
No flesh or no bones, just all
That's cool.
Like all the nerve endings, everything.
Yeah,
basically
almost like a 3D render of it.
Yeah, or if you've ever seen like that the body exhibit, they do stuff like, it's what inspired it. But they do that, and like they don't know if it's alive, so my sorcerer casts message to it because they can see the eyeballs moving and watching them. So they cast message to it, and she gets a message back, and it's just kill me repeated as many times as message will allow.
Oh god, that's dark.
Yeah, it was someone who had their entire nervous system, brain, eyes and organs magically removed and put in suspended animation, but they're still aware of it.
Yeah. That can I stop you for a second? Sure. And compliment you on your first of all, and please don't take this the wrong way, I don't consider you a sci-fi guy. I don't think sci-fi is your go-to. I think fantasy is your thing, like as in feel free to watch our episode about sci-fi. Does sci-fi belong in your D&D game? Because we talk a lot about what is and isn't fantasy, and sci-fi basically is fantasy, and it's all kind of the same when you think about it.
Indeed.
But yeah, I mean, like I tend to think about you as being a very fantasy, as in traditional magic and monster and sword and shield type fantasy person. So that when you told me you were doing an arc where you're like, oh, it'll be like technological giants, I was like, that's surprising, but also I'm very interested to see what you do. This all sounds really, really cool. I do really, really like. So what's your man's name? Namir?
Mimir, yeah. Mimir is the science officer to the giant leader, and his the giant leader is Donnerstein, which means thunder ram in German.
He pardon me. Having Mimir as the chief science officer is honestly, so if, like you said, in Norse mythology, he's the man the most smartest man in the world. He knows everything. And if you played the 2016 God of War game, he's the severed head you carry around.
2018. Sorry. No, in Norse mythology,
you carry him on your belt.
Yeah, in Norse mythology, he guards a well that you can sacrifice into to gain knowledge, and that's the well that Odin cuts his eye out in. And leaves his eye in the well, and he gains knowledge. He gains the knowledge of everything from the well. I was just looking for like an appropriately like Nordic name for a science bad guy, and I was like,
that's honestly really cool. I mean, I think that's honestly really, really inspired that you would take like that you would take that, but then you would also be like, oh, and then add all the science, sci-fi stuff to it and all that, and have him be like a cyborg and all this jazz. You sent me the stat block for it as well, and I thought it was quite cool because he had all the storm giant abilities, but then you added some sci-fi stuff to it as well. I thought it was super cool.
I might actually share that stat block, like a screenshot of that stat block on the Micflayers Twitter page if people would be interested in that, maybe.
Actually, that'd be great.
I must find the name of the artist who did the art that I just copied from my homebrew game and credit him for that as well. If we're going to post it. But yeah, their whole thing is that I wrote ages ago because when my guys were just researching vestiges and people who had them, they heard about this guy called Aradon Galespeaker. I think I gave him 2 or 3 other like Storm Wreath and something else as well. And but the one line I'd written about him was that he was believed to have possession of one. He fought the Storm Giant armies in the Jotunkrieg, and he basically, it says he like broke Donnerstein's magics on the top of the mountain and cast him down.
Yes.
So that was my like seed to design this all from, and I was like, right, if a Storm Giant can't do magic, I thought I'd nearly hit the pause button by the spacebar by accident and stopped our recording, which would have sucked. But yeah, I was thinking, like, if a giant can't do magic, what could it possibly do? And I can't fully get into the explanation for it, which I will get into at a later podcast once I've told my guys.
Don't spoil anything.
But basically, they had found a way to rapidly advance technologically, and they're sort of like in Arcane, where they're replicating magic through technology. They're doing the same. They're doing the same here, but just like they're replicating what magic can do, but without being magical at all. It's all to do with science. So like they get down to fight Mimir, and I had a really fun idea where they would all arrive in, and I knew, because of how everyone describes how a D&D party goes, when they walk into a room, they're usually in a line. They're usually horizontally together or in a straight line. So I had them come in, the bad guy like starts talking to them, and then like he basically like he kind of says something to everyone, because he oh yeah, that was it. Sorry, one of the other things they found when they explored those side rooms was a thing called the resus chamber, and it was like a giant metal tube sized for storm giants that you could stand into, and I think I wrote it to be like I think it was like 10 minutes. It gives you the benefit of an 8-hour long rest.
Oh, is it kind of like the sarcophagus in Stargate as well?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, so it could be, and I might not remember it.
Okay, in Stargate they have sarcophagi that are like advanced, and you can put humans into them, but they're not really meant for humans, and I think there's like adverse effects. But typically the ghoul will go into them if they're wounded, and it can regenerate and heal them.
Now I know what's wrong, but when you said the ghoul, and that prompted a memory. But basically, I wanted to give them 2 very difficult fights without killing them all. Because when I designed both fights, it was like this like I always difficulty wise schedule them as like deadly. Both fights are deadly, and when I saw how, because they just had some very, like they got through the other fight, but they had some very bad rolls early on, and they really took a hit. When I went into that design, I had already kind of put that in case they needed it, but turns out it was a fucking good thing they needed it. But they all jump in anyway, one by one, and they come out no problem. There's no adverse side effects, except for my draconic lineage sorcerer, because dragons and giants are ancient
enemies. Don't mix. Yeah.
And narratively, what I had to do is the resus chamber basically completely analyzes your body's makeup and your like DNA, and just fixes everything that's wrong, and will like just it's sort of like Aes Sedai healing in Wheel of Time, where they can remove tiredness. It just basically pulls everything that's making you weary or has damaged you out of you, and just like, relieves all that. For everyone else, it was 10 minutes. It felt like 10 minutes. When my sorcerer went in, it felt like hours, and rather than a pleasant warm sensation, she felt like she burned on the inside. Like it felt like hours for her, and everyone else on the outside it actually was 10 minutes? It was 10 minutes for her. It felt like a couple hours, and it felt like her, and I described it felt like her blood was boiling in her veins. And she just got all these weird flashes of images to do with like wars and dragons and lightning and stuff. And she came out, she still got the full rest, but she was mentally not okay for a bit. They talk about what happened, and then they decide, right, let's go face Mimir. So they go down. I'm going to say I really like the setup for his base. I'm sorry, this is probably dragging on a bit long, but
no, you're fine.
So I had a setup where that corridor that they had opened for them was dark, because they're basically like motion sensor lights. So they go through the corridor, opens up. There's like just a flat plane of like chrome's metal on the side, with a little button on the side of the wall that they can press. Same thing, activate it. They do it, and then but rather than going up, it immediately drops, and it drops so fast that their clothes, like their cloaks and stuff, start like rising up. And so like it continues to gain speed until the point where right before your feet are about to start lifting off, and then just a flash of electrical current goes across the floor of the thing, and everyone's feet are magnetized to the plate. The plate then further increases in speed, and right at the apex of its speed flips upside down and stops. Just goes full speed, then just flips and stops, and just has a gentle stop. They're demagnetized. They walk out, and they see they're now upside down on the floating island that the castle is on. and there's a bunch of all these like jagged rocks everywhere and like weird electrical surges, and they can't see the building itself, but they can see the outline of it, predator invisibility style, of this huge scientific facility that's hidden underside on this thing. They work their way through it. They go in there, and there's like in the hallway towards it, there's like all these trophies of like different monster bits. They work at one of them is like a dragon's eye floating in like this like preservative liquid. There's like a weird tendril, and like I kind of hinted at what each of these things were, and if they wanted to make checks they could have, but they're just laser focused on the boss. They get in anyway, and Mimir chats to them all, but he focuses in on the sorcerer, and he's like, I know what you are. I know exactly what you are and who you are. You're not leaving here. I need to study you. And he like hits a button, and I have them all make dex saves as these tubes come up from the floor and connect to the ceiling, and like trap them all inside these like giant glass test tubes.
Hang and Kodo style.
Yeah. Only one person didn't get caught in the tube.
Oh. Yeah. What's I presume there's a way they can get out, but is it like strength, or do they have to make some sort of other check?
They have a bunch of different ways to do it, but they had an AC of 20 and 15 HP.
Okay, so they could break out, but they're burning attacks or whatever if they want to. Yeah. Okay.
So they all get stuck, and what's really cool is my sorcerer, who's this is her arc. My sorcerer, whose arc this is, she rolled highest on initiative, so she goes straight after his lair actions, and his lair action was to activate the thing. So she does what I thought was really cool, in that she casts Thunderstep, and just Thundersteps out of the tube straight like kind of midway away from the guy. And because Thunderstep does an AoE, she also heavily damages the two either side of her. So like she just blinks out immediately, damages the other two, and like arrives in this like crash of thunder and lightning to fight this like sci-fi giant who they can fully see now. It was like fully mechanized. He's got this big crazy like cyborg glaive. They all one by one start breaking out. A really cool thing, Mandrai, he summons his wildfire spirit, and he has it do the fiery teleportation and just brings like 3 of them out of the test tube straight away. It was around, but it was a cool little challenge. And then they basically just go into this like brutal back and forth fight with him. I basically took all the Storm Giant stat block, and I was like, what way can I have him do all of the same things but have it be mechanical? So his lair action for a gust, I had it be where he would like lower his cyborg hand to him, and the palm would open up, and there was like a jet thruster in the palm that would just cool. Blast them back, rather than like just casting a lightning bolt spell and hurling the lightning bolt at them. I said that like each of his 5 fingers on his mechanical side had contact points, and he went like this. Ooh. And it then went like that, and it just stretched out a lightning bolt, and he hurled it at them. Instead of, I can't remember what, I think it might be Thunderstep or like Thunderstamp is the Storm Giant's recharge on a 5/6. I changed that to Runic Devastation and gave him Iron Man's Unibeam, where like his chest plates like slot apart, and he just fires his thing, and it did a shitload of damage. And I actually I had my first because I really didn't balance combat properly for them early on, so I had my first downed character in this fight. This campaign, Storm Giant just came over and hit Mandrai twice with his glaive, gone out cold. So the wildfire spirit is gone. It was really cool though. My blood hunter was next, and he basically just like bear hugged around his unconscious body, ran into the combat zone, and then ran out, so that when the sword came down, it would just hit the blood hunter's back. And then just like ran him in, because there was another room, because I had really cool 3D modular maps that I got from Grinning Gargoyle. So they have one called the Facility, and I had it set up with a side room in it, being specifically for that purpose. If any of them wanted to, like, if they were smart enough to do it, run out into another room to kind of take some heat off themselves for a while. And he did exactly that. Fed him a health potion. Jesus. Fed him a health potion. They come back out, and I believe it was my sorcerer actually did get the killing blow as well. I'd have to go back and look again, but I can't. I think that was it. Yes, she's real fond of this spell, and I completely understand why. She disintegrated him. And
when you sorry, my voice cracked really weird there.
Conor went through puberty again.
Yeah, for the 4th time. When you get disintegrate as a spellcaster, you don't need anything else.
No, so yeah, she disintegrates him. I think I'd given him 2 legendary resistances that they had already burned, and yeah, she just disintegrates him. And like obviously, like the rest of my party had all done like a fairly hefty blow to him as well by that point, but she just straight away brought him down to 0. I had her roll the damage first. I rolled the save, and I went, because I knew the save wouldn't pass her save. I went, right,
Yeah.
roll all of the damage for Disintegrate first and total it, and then I'll tell you if you have it.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I knew she wouldn't have to, so I was just making her sweat for no reason. But she like rolled it on, and she was like 73, and I was like, and all 73 points of that go through.
Nice. Yeah.
And like it described how like his human half just like dusts away like Infinity War, but like all the mechanical parts, because they're fed into his body and linked into him, all the metal like begins to like rust, and then sort of like when the Witch King dies, just like crumples out.
And crumbles inwards. Yeah.
And he just like crumples down into this pile of dust and broken machine parts. But the whole time that my sorcerer is doing this, like as she casts the spell, she like hears a voice she doesn't know but sounds very familiar, for some reason. And the whole time she's been here, she's been noticing things. Like the front door of the science facility is a door that was stolen from the fort of Aradan Galespeaker in a giant raid like centuries ago. And she didn't know what it was when she saw it, but for some reason she got a sense of familiarity about it, and she got really angry that it was there.
Oh, interesting.
Right, and then as she casts the spell and disintegrates him, she hears a voice in her head that just goes, "Show them why we are called the Wrath of the Heavens." And the man just disintegrates into hell, into like dust. And I'm just playing up her draconic lineage a lot, and it ties into some of the story and where it's going now. So now they're basically on a straight line collision course with who they now know is the revived leader of the Storm Giants, Donnerstein, who they also have assumed has mechanically outfitted himself in a similar way to Mimir. And he is on the long abandoned giant home continent of Osteria, which is the 9th one. They just saw this like giant, like way bigger than all the rest floating island.
Giant with a small G.
Yeah. It's like more like a floating city than a floating island. Like size for giants as well, like when they saw it through the telescope. So yeah, they're on their way there, and they've figured out by now that that's probably the 9th one. So they just need to get 1 or 2 more castles forward, and then those castles actually have access to the 9th castle, where they'll be able to confront the big bad in this arc. And I've had this one going a while. I kind of feel bad for how long it's drug on for the guys, but they've been having a lot of fun. But I am very, very, very excited to get the end of it, because then they already kind of know the main plot, but I have some really cool stuff planned for the end of this arc, because they'll all be vestiged up and all like have their like chosen weapons and stuff. And I have some, the whole time when the vestiges get near each other, there's like a dee, like a harmonics when they get near each other. And like I even do it now because there's 3 in the party, so if they get near each other in combat, I'm like, when you draw near this person, you hear as their vestige like corresponds to yours getting near. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and I'm very, very excited to just keep pushing that on. We're back what will be next week at time of recording, next Friday with our session back, and I think that'll be the arrival in Osteria and the approach to the final boss fight of this round. And I have some truly wild shit planned for what the bad guy's plan is.
We'll need to check back in, maybe not next week, but probably the week after, and see how that final fight ends up going.
And I am sorry, because I just realised how long I've spoken for there. Oh God.
Hey, I mean, I talked about our 2 sessions for a long time as well.
That's good.
We're kind of coming up in time, but I want to talk about a couple of things very quickly. It sort of is, it isn't, our anniversary episode.
Yeah.
We're a year doing the podcast, and I just want to ask you, Martin, is there any episodes that stand out to you as being we had particular fun doing, or you thought they were a good topic or something interesting or anything like that?
Oh God.
I'm sorry, I actually should have told you about this.
I will say I am particularly fond of our sci-fi episode. I really liked the discussion we had in that one.
Yeah, same.
Weirdly, I do like our Strixhaven one, even though I kind of wrote the plan for the episode from a bit of a negative place, because I didn't like Strixhaven. But as we, I'm seeing more and more things on YouTube where people are like Debbie chatting just straight up as a video. I watched that today. It's a great video.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, but the title is just straight up. This is the worst adventure in 5e. Like,
for a DM. But I like that one because we started at a very negative place, but still we're not so negative that we were able to point out all the positives that we did actually like about Strixhaven.
I think we both went into that episode going, oh no, the 2 of us are about to slate this and there's nothing we can do. But I think we actually end up talking the book up on its positives quite a lot, and we both came away from it thinking, oh, it's not as bad as we thought it was.
Yeah, no,
it's not great, but it's not as bad as we thought it was.
Yeah,
which was nice.
I like that we were able to be negative, but still, I suppose, mature enough to be like, right, we don't like we're conscious this isn't probably written for us, but these are the things we actually do like about it. What's the point now? I'm actually going back to our YouTube channel and just looking.
I think when it comes to the Strixhaven thing, like you said, it's nice to be mature enough that we're like, because I mean,
we did death.
So many.
I'm an idiot. We did death. Death was episode 41. Dear God.
Did we? Oh, God, I can't remember anymore.
I'm looking back.
Check out episode 41 of our podcast where we talk about death. It's inevitable.
I like our Critical Role episode a lot. The Critical Role.
I have this one here as well. I have 4 that I just pulled at random.
Oh, by all means, please. Sorry, you're much better prepared this week than I have.
No, just I think we have episode 28 of our podcast, Critical Role and its critical importance. We just talk about Critical Role and the effect it's had on 5th edition and just on tabletop in general. Yeah. We also talk a little bit about the quote unquote Matthew Mercer effect and why that can be a good and bad thing. But also, I mean, I feel like Critical Role is such a good thing in like moderation. You shouldn't base your entire love of D&D around that, but also you can absolutely love D&D. I fell in love with D&D because I found Critical Role. Same. And that inspired me. But I would very much consider myself a person who likes Critical Role a lot, but I also don't live and die on everything they do.
100%.
Which I think is healthy. There's some people that all they do, there's like artists online who are very talented, but all they do is draw Critical Role fan art, and I'm like, I'm glad you enjoy something, but it's also nice to diversify and like other things. So, but I mean, like, and it's the episode is very much us being upfront about how much we like Critical Role. We talk about Critical Role a lot. We don't do it in the podcast. I try not to do it on this podcast because I don't want this to just be let's talk about Critical Role this week, because that's a whole other thing.
That's why we did an episode. Specifically did a
specific episode.
Yeah, we have a whole hour and a half long discussion about Critical Role where we put it all in there.
But so I like that. We can talk about it, but I try not to make it the thing that we bring up every single week. But we do watch most weeks. I think I'm an episode or so behind at the moment. But I mean, for me, I just met Travis's new character. I think Travis is having a lot of fun playing it. I'm having a lot of fun watching it. He makes the best
characters. He makes the best characters. I love
Travis is such a dark horse when it comes to the characters he makes sometimes, because they can be. Grog can come off. If you watch him play Grog, you think he's maybe not bringing a lot to the table, but when you watch him then play Ford has a lot going on and he's way more expensive. And then when you watch him play Bertrand at the start of this campaign, it's like that's the whole other direction he's gone. Travis is great with that kind of stuff.
They've had a new character for a few weeks. We said Chetney is phenomenal. His dialogue, the way he talks to people, it is just like a grumpy old man. I literally laughed out loud 4 times. And I'm only halfway through this week's episode. I was watching it before we started recording this, and I was literally sitting here in my room on my own, laughing like a lonely nerd.
Yeah. So I mean, like we do really, really enjoy Critical Role, but we also think that there's lessons both encouraging and kind of almost like words of warning that can be taken away from Critical Role as well. Yeah. In terms of like, and go and watch episode 28 of our podcast. I'm quite proud of that one. I think we accurately talk about the positives. Like, some people don't like Critical Role because they're like, it sets unrealistic expectations, and I think that's a fair point. That's more so on the players going in, that they don't have these, I don't know, $100,000 studios with multiple cameras and lighting effects and 8 or 9 professional voice actors sitting at a table. If you go in with those expectations, you're going to be disappointed. But I think the comparison I made was like, if you watch a soccer match with your friends or any sort of sporting event, and you're like, let's go out and play let's go down, we'll kick the ball around, we'll have a bit of fun. If you go down to a pitch or a green or whatever, and your expectation when you go to the park with your friends to kick a soccer ball around is, this is going to be just like that 40,000 person arena that I watched last night. It's not. Realistically, it's not. But you can still have a lot of fun with it with your friends. It doesn't have to be that big thing you see online. Yeah. So I think we raised a lot of good points there. And I think Critical Role is more of a benefit to to the hobby and to 5th edition in particular, then it is a hindrance. I think there's definitely some pitfalls, but I think they can be very easily avoided with some mitigation of our expectations. Yeah. Another one I have here is episode 33, which is miniatures growing your collection. That was our first ever interview, first and only so far anyway, interview episode with our friend Gavin, who's in our campaign, came on. Gavin knows a lot about miniatures in terms of where to buy them, how to make them, how to paint them, how to assemble them. Kit bashing was the thing I learned about in that episode. Like, I had no idea what that was before the episode. I think I like that one so much because I learned a lot in it. I collect minis and I like minis a lot. I don't have the time to sit down and paint them. I typically put the little grey. They're either grey or white or transparent, and I just stick them down the field, and I'm just like, it's basically it is what it is. But Gavin paints them, he assembles them, he buys them from multiple sites. Like I said, he does kit bashing where he'll take a couple different minis apart that he got from 2 different sources and put them together to make either a really cool monster or a really cool like soldier or something like that. He's shown me some recently. Gav really wants to run a Diesel Punk D&D game, and he took some like soldiers that were I think they were partially Warhammer and partially something else, so they look a little bit like kind of World War One-ish, but then he threw some Warhammer stuff on to make them a little more, Diesel Punk and techno kind of stuff, and they look fantastic. And I actually really like seeing them unpainted because you can see the different color plastics and that this is not belonging to that and stuff. But yeah, episode 33, guys, miniatures and growing your miniatures. Sorry, it's just called miniatures, growing your collection. It's a great episode. I think the 3 of us had a lot of fun doing it. Just because, like I said, I feel like I learned a lot in that episode.
100%.
Anyone for yourself? Anything jumping out at you?
Yeah, actually, I was just looking through it. I really like. I think it's episode 18. Is it? No, sorry, not 18. Episode 15. YCR makes no sense. I think that's one.
Oh yeah. I feel like that was when we kind of around that time. I think we were starting to hit a stride with the podcast. It was early days, but I feel like we were starting to hit a good stride. YCR makes no sense. It's a very valuable lesson to take away, particularly if you're just jumping into the game casually and only playing a one shot every now and again. I don't think CR is the worst system to use by, but we kind of come to the conclusion in that episode that that CR is a good guideline, but there are other factors in play like action economy and stuff like that need to be taken into account. Sometimes you overshoot the mark, sometimes you undershoot the mark.
100%.
I ran a one shot there over the weekend or not, like last week, where I sent the guys down into a tomb because it was the tomb of this knight, Saint Florent the Grey. And they went down and there's something down in the catacombs. Stabbed one of the monks. He's okay, but he hasn't regained consciousness. We want you to go down there and root out whatever or whoever it is. And it turned out to be 4 hobgoblins and 4 regular goblins. And it's a party at level 5s. And I was like, okay, I know these guys won't last long. They'll be killed quite quickly. But that's not the point. I want them, action economy wise, they'll get enough hits in that there'll be a couple of stabs and a couple of swipes here and there with scimitars and stuff. In the first round, Monk runs in. He's a new Draconic Monk. He does his acid breath, kills 3 of them instantly because they all failed their dex save. And I'm like, oh my god. Then the wizard, there's a wizard. She was a wizard lizard.
Yes!
She was a wizard lizard folk, and her name was Liz Anya.
Was this your sister?
No, this was Sean.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and then he comes in and he uses one of his only 2 third level spells that he's going to have, and he fireballs the entire room, and then the other 5 are instantly dead. My sister and Tara did not get a turn in this combat because in half a round it was over.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love
but then
it.
he didn't have that later on. He didn't have that 3rd level spell later on. But yeah, it's so yeah, CR can be, even though the combat might tell you this is balanced, it's not always accurate. One of our very early ones that I really like, because I feel like, I don't know if we were on our best. I feel like we were on a good game because I feel like we had lots to talk about on that one, but it was still early enough days that I feel like maybe we didn't have our dynamic worked out yet. Is episode 7, really far back. How to make gold more useful.
Yes.
I love that episode because I feel like the lessons that can be taken away from it in terms of where your players can spend money. Like, because again, a lot of D&D is let's go kill the dragon. Oh, we found the dragon sword. Woo! What do we spend this on? Magic items is an obvious one, but then there's like you can get other like disposable or usable items, consumables. You can spend it on property. You can invest in things. There's lots of stuff you can do with gold in D&D that I don't always feel get taken advantage of.
Yeah, 100%. Because of that episode, whenever I've done downtime now, after that with my players, I've been like, we're doing downtime. I've given them notice ahead of time. Like, sure, by the way, whenever we get to the end of this arc, whatever happens, we're gonna be doing a downtime of. I haven't decided yet, but I'll give you some time. And I've done that a couple of times now, and because each time I've been like, these are all like when I say it, I'll at the end because we were playing virtually, I like shared my screen and pulled up the like downtime options page, and I was like, these are all of the things you can do.
Yeah,
and like I read them out and went through each of them, and as a result of that, one of my players has made a spell.
Which is super cool, by the way.
Yeah, it's a very fun spell. Not so much when you're trying to DM for it, and it wrecks your encounter immediately.
Actually, that's episode 7 is how to use gold. We also have an episode in episode 35, how to spend your downtime. Check it out.
Yeah, and we also have another kind of one. You could almost do them as a trio: how to spend gold, how to spend your downtime, and then we also have magic items, a DM's perspective, which I think is a really good episode as well.
Yes, yeah, that is that's.
I think it's 30 something.
It is 21.
Oh, okay.
Magic is the the thumbnail is my head awkwardly stuck on a blacksmith's body, and he's sticking a holy avenger into a furnace. That's like you're absolutely right. Those three are great because they talk about getting gold, where to spend it, magic items being one of them, what to do with them, and then they kind of bring in like crafting it in your downtime, and it all kind of comes around full circle, full triangle, if you will, because there's three of them.
Yeah, actually, my gunslinger literally just made a sniper rifle in over the last while. He'd started in downtime, because he only had a little bit of his downtime left. So he started in downtime, and then progressively as they've collected more and more interesting monster bits, he has just for purely for decoration has added more monster bits to it, and now he completed it there. I want to say 2-3 sessions ago, and it's called the Broken Bell, which I love.
That's cool. If I'm going to go back to, I think this is the earliest one I'm going to suggest. I think.
Okay.
Episode 4, our sidekick's a problem.
Yay!
Are
they, Connor? Are they?
Do you know what? They're really not.
No.
I kind of thought they would be. We jump into the sidekick, because this was around the time Tasha's came out.
Yeah.
And we jump into the sidekick rules in Tasha's and kind of examine like how they could work in a party and how you would introduce a sidekick or who controls them, and are they an NPC that the player or that the DM can speak for, or is it all controlled by the player? We get into a lot, but we get at the end of the episode we don't know because we haven't really put us through its paces. But we're like we knew you wanted to make Frost, your dog, into a sidekick and level him out accordingly. And we've done that now, and like Frost actually I think is a really valued member of the party while also not being overpowered. I feel like he's there. He's definitely helpful. We only talked about a while ago how he knocked that fella down and knocked him prone and stopped him from escaping. Frost has had a couple of clutch moments.
The damage, the disadvantage when someone attacks someone he's standing beside is big.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you use that constantly as well. Like so Frost has a lot going for him. I think maybe now he is obviously a warrior style. Mm-hmm. Maybe if it came to like the spellcaster type or the mage.
I actually have the scout. I have a scout sidekick in my game now as well, because my sorcerer. I bent the rules a little. You're supposed to have a sidekick that can talk for scout. But what I've done narratively is my sorcerer has a raven that she got as a very young girl and grew up with, and when they revisited their hometown a while back, her friend Grog gave her the raven like flew and settled on her shoulder, and now it comes with her, and it basically lives in her hair. He like sits on her shoulder and will speak to her, but it's like hand and chewy. Only she can understand him, and vice versa.
Right, yeah.
And then, like when he's finished talking, he's Scottish, by the way, because she decided that. I do the voice. And when he's done talking, he like buries himself in like the long part, like her long hair that drapes down her back, and just like disappears and then reappears when he's needed. But he's been really cool as well. They have some fun combat stuff where they can give like a D6 I think it's like a d6 to a damage roll. For when someone he can basically fly over and distract someone while someone else is attacking them, and if they do that, they get a d6 to their damage. It's called like I want to say it's called combined strike, I think.
Is that the expert?
That's it, sorry, the expert, yeah.
Yeah. So did they get sneak attack, don't they?
I don't think so.
Oh, maybe not so. Because I know they're meant to be like the rogue equivalent or the skill person equivalent.
Yeah.
That's interesting because it just reminds me of that. The Witcher 3 has a cinematic where Yennefer.
Yes. Yeah.
Is like she's running away from the battle, and someone kind of corners her, and this raven that's with her literally flies and swoops down at a guy full speed and tucks its wings in and impales itself into his eye.
Yeah.
And it's metal as hell. But yeah, that just reminded me of that immediately when you're like, oh, he helps in combat. I'm like, that's really cool.
It's been a lot of fun.
So yeah, I think we can both probably say that they are powerful to the point where I think anyone would be happy to have them. But we were worried they'd be really overpowered because they seem like they'd be a whole extra party member. But actually, I don't even factor Frost into most combats, and you guys still. I put you through your paces.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, the last two in particular.
Yeah. So yeah, I honestly think that that if definitely go and watch the episode. It's one of our early ones, so maybe if our camera quality or sound quality or something's off, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do because it's the past. But also, I do think we bring up some good points, and I think we can finally answer the question, Martin. Are psychics a problem? No, they're not. They're fantastic, and everyone should use them.
I was actually going to say that might be one we revisit maybe later on in both campaigns.
Oh, forget what I said. So
maybe. Well, you'll know if it ever comes up on a me week, because it'll probably be me who'll bring it up just because Frost. Psychics. I've been absolutely loving. Like Frost has been amazing in the party so far, both for role play and like mechanical reasons. And then Bran, by the way, is the Raven's name, Bran, which is cute. Yeah. He's been awesome. He's basically just like a cheeky Glaswegian Raven.
That's fantastic, but Martin.
Yes, Connor.
That's all the time we have for this week.
Oh man, it's been so good to be back. I've actually really I did not realize.
I feel rusty. Yeah. I feel rusty, but I think I'll get into it now next week and I'll be grand.
Yeah, I didn't
Also, my throat's killing me.
Yeah, sorry about that. I did not realize how much I missed this. Like, because I did it. I won't lie. I did enjoy the little break where it was like Saturdays. I don't have to do anything. But like coming back to do this now, I'm like, I remember now why I like podcasting so much. It's a lot of fun to talk about things you love with your friends.
It's a therapy, and it's just fun chatting.
Yeah.
If you have any questions you'd like us to ask, stories you'd like us to share, or topics you would like us to cover, you can tweet us at Micflayers Pod on Twitter. You see it in the lower screen. You can also find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, and Radio Republic. Martin, where can people find you on the internet?
Yes, you can mostly find me on Twitter. It's over. And also I tend to man the Micflayers Twitter account as well, particularly if you see it at tweeting at like 3 a.m. Irish time. It's definitely me. Yeah, mostly there. I've kind of stopped Twitch streaming because my computer's being weird about it. But I'm hoping to get back into that maybe sometime this year. But that's mostly it, just on the Twitter. And here every Friday for the Micflayers Podcast, 6 p.m. Irish time. What about you, Connor? Where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at 0.Conor, ZEROPOINTCONOR, 1N, very important, it's good to be back. And also you can find me every Friday, 6 p.m. On the aforementioned platforms here on the Micflayers Podcast. So guys, thank you so much for watching us, listening. Thanks.
Thank you for a year of Micflayers.
Thank you for a year of Micflayers, guys. So anyone who's been watching over the past year, we're having a lot of fun. We're probably going to keep this up. And it's nice when people engage, comment, do that likey, commenty, subscribey thing. Is that something I'm going to say every week now? Probably not, but
like,
it's nice
when people engage. If you have anything you want us to cover, hit us up with a tweet.
Guys,
at Micflayers
smash that like button. No, I hate myself.
What's up? It's your boy.
Guys, that's all from us. Have a good day, and we'll see you all next week.
What do my housemates think? Jesus.